I don't know who was in that office with me. I've thought about it every single night since then. I've gone over every detail. Every sound. Every moment I told myself it was nothing and looked away. And what I keep coming back to, the thing that doesn't let me sleep, is how long it must have been there before I noticed. The building was empty. I had checked. I had walked every corridor on that floor before I sat back down at my desk. The lights were off everywhere except my section. Just my monitor and the small lamp on the corner table by the window. What I know is this. At 2 a.m., my colleague's phone lit up on her desk across the room. She had left it there when she went home at 6. I saw the screen glow from where I was sitting. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I should have thought something of it. I work late most nights. Not because I have to. Just because the office is quieter after everyone leaves. The kind of quiet that doesn't exist anywhere else. No conversations in the background. No phones ringing from other desks. No footsteps in the corridor. Just the low hum of the ventilation system and the sound of my own keyboard. Our building has 12 floors. Our company takes up 2 of them, the 7th and the 8th. I work on the 7th. There are about 40 desks on our floor arranged in clusters of 4 and 6. Most of them have personal items on them. A plant. A framed photo. A coffee mug left from the day before. Little signs of people who will come back in the morning. The woman who sits across from me is named Sarah. We have worked in the same cluster for almost 2 years. She is the kind of person who remembers everyone's birthday and waters the plant by the window even though no one asked her to. She is not the kind of person who causes problems. She is not the kind of person anything strange should happen around. That night she had stayed until nearly 6. A call that ran late. I heard her wrap it up and start packing her bag. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the partition, said goodnight, and walked toward the elevator. I raised a hand without looking up from my screen. The elevator doors closed. About a minute later I noticed her phone on the desk. Face up, screen dark, sitting right next to her keyboard where it always was. I picked up my own phone to message her. Told her she had left it. She replied almost immediately from her personal number. Said she would grab it first thing in the morning. Not to worry. That was at 6:14 p.m. I set my phone down and forgot about it. I didn't think about Sarah's phone again for almost 6 hours. The office has a particular feeling after midnight. The ventilation slows down around 11 and the air goes a little stale. The temperature drops by a degree or 2. The cleaning crew comes through between 9 and 10 and by midnight the bins are empty and the floor smells faintly of the product they use on the hard surfaces. It is not an unpleasant smell. It is just the smell of the office being cleaned and empty and waiting. I had made myself coffee from the kitchen at the end of the floor around 10. The motion sensor lights clicked on as I walked down the aisle between the desks. Each section lit up a few seconds ahead of me and went dark a few seconds behind. It made the walk feel strange. Like being followed by light. Like something was tracking exactly where I was without needing to see me directly. I had noticed that before and thought nothing of it. That night it felt different. I cannot explain why. I filled my cup and stood at the kitchen window for a moment. The city looked still from up there. A few other office buildings across the street had lights on in scattered windows. Someone else working late, or lights left on by accident, or cleaning crews moving through. A car moved slowly along the road below. Then another. Then nothing. I walked back to my desk. The lights clicked off behind me one by one. I sat down and worked for another 2 hours without looking up. At midnight I noticed Sarah's phone screen was on. Not bright. Dim, the kind of dim a screen goes when it has been idle for a long time and is almost about to go dark. But on. Lit up enough to see from across the cluster. I assumed a notification had come through. A message or an app alert. Something that had woken the screen for a few seconds. I looked back at my monitor. 20 minutes later I looked up again. The screen was still on. I sat with that for a moment. Screens don't stay on. Even if a notification comes through, the screen lights up for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and then goes dark again. 20 minutes of continuous screen on with no one touching it, that is not how phones work. That is not how any phone works. I got up and walked to Sarah's desk. I stood in front of it and looked at the screen without picking the phone up. It was open on her Messages app. The thread at the top of the screen, the most recently active conversation, was with my name. I stood there and I read what I could see. The thread showed the last few messages between us. There was the one she had sent me from her personal number at 6:14 p.m. The one about picking up the phone in the morning. That was where our conversation ended. Or where I thought it ended. Below that message, there were 3 more. Sent after 6:14. Sent from this phone, the phone sitting on the desk in an empty office on the 7th floor of a building with a security log that showed no entries after mine at 7:52 a.m. that morning. I read them slowly. The first was sent at 9:02 p.m. 3 hours after Sarah had left the building. It said, "Still there?" The second was sent at 11:47 p.m. It said, "You should go home." The third was sent at 12:19 a.m. 4 minutes ago. It said, "I can see your light from here." I held very still. I read all 3 messages again. Then I checked my own phone. I went to my messages and opened the thread with Sarah's name. Not her personal number, her work number. The number assigned to the phone sitting on the desk in front of me. There was nothing there. No messages. Not a single one. 3 messages had been sent from this phone to my number and not one of them had arrived. I looked at the office around me. My section was lit. Every other section was dark. The corridor beyond the cluster was dark. The kitchen at the far end was dark. The glass partition that separated our floor from the small meeting rooms along the east wall was dark. The message said it could see my light from here. That meant it could see me. I went back to my desk. I sat down and I did not look toward the dark sections of the floor. I opened Sarah's contact on my phone, her personal number, the one she had replied from at 6:14, and I typed a message telling her that someone had been using her work phone. I asked if she had come back to the office. I asked if she was okay. I watched the message deliver. The reply came in 40 seconds. She said, "No. I'm at home. I've been home since 6. What do you mean someone used it?" I typed back, "There are messages sent from your work phone after you left. Sent to my number. I didn't receive them but they're in the thread on the screen." She said, "That doesn't make sense. Can you send me a photo of the screen?" I looked across the cluster at her desk. The phone screen was still on. Still showing the thread. I stood up and walked back to her desk. I raised my phone to take a photo of the screen. While I was framing the shot, a 4th message appeared in the thread. It said, "Don't do that." I put my phone down. I stood at Sarah's desk and I did not move for several seconds. The ventilation had gone completely quiet at some point. I hadn't noticed when. The floor was silent in a way that felt different from the usual late-night silence. More complete. More deliberate. I typed to Sarah without taking the photo. I told her a new message had come through while I was standing there. I told her what it said. She did not reply for almost 2 minutes. When she did, she said, "Come down to the lobby. Right now. Don't take the elevator." I looked at the east stairwell door. It was at the far end of the floor, past the dark sections, past the meeting rooms. The nearest exit. I looked at the west stairwell door. Closer. Directly behind me on the other side of the kitchen. I started moving toward the west stairwell. Slowly. Not running. Something told me not to run. Something told me that movement, fast, obvious, panicked movement, was the wrong choice. I kept my eyes forward and walked toward the kitchen. The motion sensor lights clicked on ahead of me as I walked. Each section lit up. I watched the light spread across the desks and the partitions and the floor. For sections between me and the stairwell door. The third section lit up. And then I stopped. Because the fourth section, the last one before the stairwell, did not. Motion sensor lights work the same way every night. You walk into range and they switch on. They have worked the same way on that floor for the 2 years I have been there. Every single night. Every single walk to the kitchen and back. The fourth section did not light up. Which meant the sensor had registered something already in that section. Something that was already standing in the dark between me and the door. I stopped walking. I stood in the pool of light from the third section and I looked at the fourth. I could not see anything. It was too dark. The city light through the windows on the far wall gave just enough to see the shapes of the desks and the chairs and the partitions. Nothing else. Nothing standing. Nothing moving. But the light had not come on. I turned around slowly and walked back through the lit sections toward my desk. The lights clicked off behind me as I went. I sat down and I put my back to the window and I looked at the floor in front of me. Sarah messaged again. She said, "Are you in the lobby?" I told her I wasn't. I told her about the light. She said, "Go to the east stairwell. Go now." I looked at the east end of the floor. The corridor along the meeting rooms. All dark. Longer walk. More distance. More darkness to move through. My phone buzzed again. Sarah. She said, "I'm calling the security desk." I typed back, "Ask them to check the log. Ask them who's in the building." While I waited, I pulled up the internal security system on my monitor. Our company has access to the building's entry log for our floors. A running list of badge scans. Time in. Time out. I filtered for the past 24 hours. The log showed normal traffic throughout the day. People arriving between 7 and 9 in the morning. People leaving in clusters around 5 and 6 in the evening. A few late departures between 7 and 9. After that, one entry. Mine. 7:52 a.m. Badge scan at the main entrance turnstile. No exits recorded after 6:43 p.m., when the last person other than me had left. One person in the building after 6:43. Me. But the light in the fourth section had not come on. Sarah messaged again. She said the security desk had confirmed the same thing. One person in the building after 7. No one had signed in or out through any entrance since then. She said, "The guard is coming up." I watched the elevator indicator on the wall across the floor. The numbers ticked upward. 7 lit up. The doors opened. The guard walked out and the motion sensors clicked on around him as he moved toward me. He was a tall man I had seen at the desk downstairs many times without ever learning his name. He had a torch in his hand that he wasn't using yet. He asked me what was going on. I showed him the phone on Sarah's desk. I showed him the thread. He read the messages without speaking. Then he looked up at me and asked when the last message had come in. I told him. About 20 minutes ago. He picked up Sarah's phone. He looked at the screen carefully. Then he turned it over and looked at the back. He set it back down on the desk. He said, "This phone is dead. The battery indicator is at 0. It's been at 0 since I don't know when." I looked at the screen. It was still on. Still lit. Still showing the thread with the fourth message sitting at the bottom. "Don't do that." The guard looked at the screen and then looked at me. He said he didn't understand how a phone with a dead battery was displaying anything. Neither did I. He walked the floor with the torch while I stayed at my desk. I watched the beam move through the dark sections. The fourth section. The meeting rooms along the east wall. The kitchen. The storage cupboard near the printer station. He came back and said there was no one there. I told him about the fourth section light. The motion sensor that hadn't triggered. He walked back to the fourth section and stood in it. The light came on immediately. He looked at me. I looked at him. There was nothing I could say. He offered to stay on the floor until I was ready to leave. I told him I was ready now. We took the elevator down together and he walked me to the entrance. I signed out at 2:38 a.m. I got in my car and sat there. I called Sarah. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything the guard had said. About the battery. About the light coming on when he stood there. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that I have not been able to stop thinking about. She said, "My work phone has been dead since last week. The battery swelled. I was going to tell IT. It hasn't turned on in 5 days. I left it on my desk because I forgot it was even there. I sat in the car and said nothing. A dead phone. No battery. Screen on. Messages sent. Received and read in real time." I said, "Sarah. Then what sent those messages?" She didn't answer that. I don't think she could. I called in sick the next 2 days. On the third day I worked from home and told my manager the commute had been difficult. He didn't push back. On the fourth day I went in and sat at my desk and tried to act like nothing had happened. Sarah's phone was gone. She had picked it up the morning after and taken it to IT. They confirmed the battery was completely dead and had been for several days. The phone could not have displayed anything. It could not have sent anything. There was no charge, no residual power, no explanation for a lit screen. IT filed it as a fault and gave her a replacement. I sat at my desk and I looked at the spot where her phone had been. The desk looked the same as always. The plant. The framed photo. The coffee mug. Everything exactly where it should be. I tried to go back to working late after that. I managed it twice. Both times I left before 11. Both times the walk to the kitchen felt wrong in the same way it had that night. The lights clicking on ahead of me and off behind me. That feeling of being tracked without being seen. I don't stay late anymore. The thing I keep coming back to, the part one cannot settle in my mind, is the entry log. One person in that building after 6:43 p.m. Mine. No exits. If something else was on that floor, it did not enter through the main entrance. It did not badge in. It did not use the turnstile or the stairwell doors that register every opening. The guard found nothing when he checked the floor. But the light in the fourth section did not come on when I walked toward it. Motion sensors do not make mistakes. They register heat and movement within range. If the sensor did not trigger, there was something in that section absorbing the detection. Standing still. Standing close enough to the sensor's range that walking toward it should have triggered the system. Or standing just outside the range. Just behind the desks. Against the partition. Still enough and small enough to stay undetected. Waiting. The messages said, "You should go home." And then, "I can see your light from here." And then, "Don't do that." 3 instructions. The first a suggestion. The second an observation. The third a warning. Each one arriving at exactly the right moment. Time to what I was doing. Aware of where I was and what I was about to do. Which means it was watching the whole time. Not just from the fourth section. From wherever it had been since long before I noticed the phone. The last thing I want to tell you is this. 2 weeks after that night, I was at my desk on a normal Tuesday afternoon. The office was full. People on calls. Keyboards going. The usual noise of a working day. I got a message on my phone. Unknown number. I opened it. It said, "You left your light on again last night." I had not been in the office the night before. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I looked up at the floor around me. All the desks. All the people. All the normal noise of a normal day. I thought about what it means to leave a light on. I thought about what it means to be watched in a lit room from somewhere dark. And then I thought about something Sarah had said when I called her that night. Something small that I had almost forgotten. She had said the phone had been dead since last week. But the last message in the thread, "Don't do that," had come through while I was standing at her desk. While I was raising my phone to take a photo. If the phone had no battery, no power, no way to function, then something else had sent that message. And if something else had sent that message, something that was not Sarah, not a glitch, not a fault, then whatever it was had been watching me closely enough to know exactly what I was about to do before I did it. And it is still watching now. I don't know from where. I don't know for how long. I just know that the next time your phone lights up in an empty room, before you reach for it, before you read what's on the screen, think about who could have sent it. And whether they're close enough to see your face when you do.